Studio DNA Podcast Network presents What Else with Corey Mann.
Chris, Dustin.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I still in my head fight with it's Justin.
No, it's not.
I know, which is the weirdest thing. Like, I wrote it down this morning when we were on the air. His name is Dustin. Literally.
Just remember.
I've been called Justin all my life, so it doesn't matter.
What do you think that is?
Because it's a more common name.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It is. In fact, there's only a few Dustins out there, until Stranger Things came out. And
Oh, yeah.
There's a Dustin.
Got popular all over again.
yeah, so I think Dustin's going to get popular again. So.
Okay.
He's a likable character.
Sanctus Real wasn't the original name, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to think if there was another name. For some reason, I've got a name in my head. Let me see if it matches up with yours.
Yeah. There's a couple.
Ascension?
No.
That's not you? Is there something with a number?
I'm glad.
There was, yeah. Yeah, a number.
Something 127 or what was it?
There's two numbers. Actually, my favorite number, my son's baseball number, down at 16 was the first iteration because we were all 16 years old.
And you're down at 16. We're
We
down.
were down. We were so down.
Okay.
That didn't last very long, but
It worked for a year.
it worked really well for a year. That was fun. Yeah, we had a logo and everything, I'm pretty sure. We were serious.
So that was the first name.
That was the first name.
And then when you all turned 17, a new name?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if this is the right progression, the next name to be considered and be used for a short time was Chocolate Mousse.
Go on.
Chocolate Mousse.
Oh, let's stop there.
Yeah, that might have been right before Sanctus Real. Or maybe it was Chocolate Mousse and then down at 16. But Chocolate Mousse was definitely a name that we carried for a little bit.
Now, moose, the animal or the dessert?
Well, funny you ask. It was the dessert, pretty sure. But our logo, because with every name we had a logo, was a moose. It was confusing, right?
Like a Wally World moose?
It had like a, yeah.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah,
Can
let's go.
What was the thought process?
What were you thinking?
What-
I don't know.
I mean, you guys wanted to be popular, right?
I don't think we did, apparently. We weren't looking at other bands that had similar names, so I don't know where the inspiration came from.
I don't want to tease the name Chocolate and Mousse, but here's my thinking was, okay, they've decided to go that way. We're going to need some chocolate mousse for the live shows to either pass out, throw out, or some fellowship afterwards. Like,
Yeah.
join us for chocolate mousse.
Chocolate Mousse.
That did not happen.
That never happened,
Okay.
sadly.
The guys all got together in Christian school, faith-based school,
Yeah, yep.
chapel band.
Chapel Band is where we started. I had just been playing guitar. Probably when I turned 14, I think I got my first guitar. So freshman year of high school.
You bought it or parents bought it for you?
The very first one that I learned on was my dad's.
Okay.
And it was an electric guitar. I still have it. A Fender Squire, Lake Placid blue.
Wow.
And it sat underneath my bed. My dad took lessons apparently when I was like 2 or 3 years old. And then the guitar went away, but it stayed underneath my bed growing up all those years. There was a guitar under my bed that I wasn't really allowed to touch. It wasn't like it's off limits. It was just like, there's a guitar, just stay away from it. I'm like, okay. So 14 comes around and I'm listening to music on the radio and I want to learn how to play some of this rock and roll. And I'm like, hey Dad, can we pull that guitar out? And we pulled it out and he showed me some chords. He got me started
Okay.
on guitar, but I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. The song that I heard on the radio that I wanted to learn how to play was Lenny Kravitz, Are You Gonna Go My Way? And it had that guitar riff in it. It's infamous. I mean, you still hear it
Yeah.
at sporting events. And I was like, Dad, can we learn how to play that song? So before he even taught me how to play a chord, the first time I'd seen this guitar in like probably 10 years, we pull it out. I think I had taped it off the radio. I played it to my dad. I'm like, can you figure that out? And up to that point in my life, my dad played accordion too. So I've seen my dad play accordion. I've seen pictures of him with a guitar, but I haven't actually seen him play a guitar. And I asked him to play this screaming riff that I just taped off the radio. And he pulled it out, and we sat on my bed, and he figured out how to play it and showed it to me. And that night, I mean, that changed my life right there. It's like that riff playing it on that guitar with my dad, just figuring it out on the spot. I was like, all right, this is exciting. So
How'd that make you feel watching Dad learn that, and then in a few moments you'll be learning it as well?
yeah.
I loved watching my dad do
Oh, yeah.
stuff and wanted to be him.
Yep.
Was that what it was like at that moment?
That was it, man. Like, my dad is a self-employed. He's a photographer. So I've seen him do a lot of things that are maybe out of the ordinary compared to what I saw other dads doing growing up. He'd be shooting stuff on location. His job took him different places all the time. And so to me, to ask my dad to show me something like that wasn't, in my mind, that big a deal. It's like, surely my dad can do this. So it wasn't, I didn't have fear that it was going to disappoint. And sure enough, it probably took a little while. It probably took half an hour sitting there, but we figured it out. And you couldn't Google, how do you play
Right.
this song? It was hearing something on the radio at that point as a teenager and translating it to your fingers on a guitar it blew my mind. It completely blew my mind. So it was a memorable experience for sure.
My first guitar teacher said, "What do you want to learn?" And I was like, "Really? Yeah, what do you want to learn?"
Anything, right?
And I was like, "I like the Cars." This is early '80s.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, how about oh gosh, what was it? Some real super easy chord, whatever."
Yep.
It might have been "You Might Think." Do you remember that song? You might think. I'm
yeah.
crazy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Yep, little palm muting here and
Yeah,
there.
yeah. You play multiple instruments.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen you play keyboard. I've seen you play guitar.
Yeah.
Which one came first?
The drums.
Really?
Actually, the first sounds. I've been a jack of all trades, master of none. But I started on the violin.
Oh boy.
The violin is what I actually took a lesson for, and I had this great Austrian, or Hungarian, he'd be upset if I called him German. He's Hungarian, and he was an insanely best musician I've ever known in my entire life. He was a soloist for the Toledo Symphony Orchestra. He played in the Hungarian Symphony Orchestra, and he settled in Toledo, Ohio, and he ended up coming to our church. And he has an amazing story, and his way of giving back was finding kids that he discovered had musical ability and teaching them for free. And he was kind of the basis of my starting in music. The problem was I got bored with violin really fast because you can only play melodies. And so I started playing drums because our church needed a drummer. And my brother wanted to play, and he ended up not playing as much, and we had a drum set in the house, so I started playing and copying things from Counting Crows and stuff like that. And so I started with drums, and then I just liked music, and it came pretty naturally. And we had a piano that was completely out of tune. I grew up playing a totally out of tune piano. But I figured out chords and kind of how to do it and just kind of practice stuff. Yeah. And we're both the kind of musicians, even right now, like we go to Nashville and they're so trained and they're calling out numbers, and we're both just completely self-taught on a lot of stuff. So we're kind of like, okay, give us a second. Let me figure it out real quick.
We'll get there.
And so yeah, I kind of wish I'd stuck with one, because then I would have been great at one. But I can mask on a few different instruments. I think piano was before guitar, because we had one and we didn't have a guitar. I actually started playing guitar, this is funny, on an old, I don't even know the name brand. It wasn't even the brand, like I've never heard of the brand, and it had 3 strings. And my mom saw it at like a flea market or something, and she picked it up and she didn't even get new strings. And I tuned the strings the way it was supposed to, and I learned kind of bar chords like on the guitar. That's where I first started playing guitar on 3 strings. So kind of rough around the edges.
Isn't that a saying though? 3 strings in the truth, or 3 chords in the truth?
3 chords.
Well, I mean, if you're playing old, playing old rock and roll, you can play on 3 strings all you want.
I'm pretty sure as soon as you said violin, I'm going through my little Rolodex of my mind. The only time the violin was ever cool in rock and roll, I think the one and only time, is The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Maybe.
And that would probably be the hardest
I couldn't play
to ever learn on violin,
And if my violin instructor heard me playing that, he might have, because he wouldn't call that a violin.
I wouldn't give you extra credit on that.
That's not a violin. That wouldn't be a violin to him. That would be called a fiddle.
Oh, a fiddle.
Yeah, that's called fiddling. That's
Because it's
not violin.
south of the Mississippi.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's a style of playing, and that he was ridiculous. And
Yeah.
he loved music, and I remember telling him there was this piece that this guy was trying to play. He was 18 years old, and they said he started when he was 11 to learn this piece, and he just finally mastered it. And my old violin teacher, who had a messed up pinky, played the tune with 3 fingers by memory. And he played it completely flawless, and I think my jaw hit the floor, and I thought, this guy's way too good for me.
That's crazy.
So it was pretty cool.
The birth of Sanctus Real comes from the chapel band, and then you decide, let's do this thing. We're gonna chase after it. You told me a story this morning about the contest. Was that a Sanctus Real demo at the radio station?
Yeah, it was. It was back in Toledo, WIOT, still a classic rock station. So I grew up listening to that station, and they had a Battle of the Bands contest. I think I went into our local music store, which sadly is no longer there. It was a great music store. I bought a lot of my guitars over the years that I still have. And one of the guys was like, hey, you should enter in because I think I played it for him. I brought it in there, I played it for him. And he's like, you should take this downtown. I think this is the last weekend. He probably had a band that he was in that submitted to, probably.
Right.
I mean, at that time, I didn't know there were that many bands in Toledo, but there were like 70 entries into this contest. And we had this 3-song project that we weren't really sure where it was going to go, but we had just finished 3 songs, probably working towards a full length, but that was down the road. And one of the songs we entered in that weekend, we actually got a call from the station, I think on Monday, and they were like, hey, just so you know, it looks like you guys are going to win. And we're like, really? Like, I think the voting, I think they had online voting for that even back then, or online was part of it. I don't know how the word got out, but the word got out and people voted and we won it, and they called us ahead of time. And the prize, what was the prize? The prize was, we got our song played on the air. That was one prize. But at the time, the local Christian radio station wasn't playing our music during their regular programming. We were on the local hour. And so once we got played on the classic rock station, then we started hearing our song be played during the day at the Christian radio station, which was awesome. Kind of shattered the rule there after we won that contest. But I don't think there was any kind of recording time that was won. I think it was recognition, and we all got over to my house the night that they were going to announce the winner, even though we knew we were going to win. And I remember they played like a Zeppelin tune, and then they played Sanctus Real.
Oh my.
And it was like, first time hearing yourself on, during normal hours on a huge station in your hometown. And then I forget who they played after that. I wasn't even listening. We were so like floored. We couldn't believe it. We were at my house. We all got in the living room. We turned the stereo up. And that opened a lot of doors for us at that time. Being a local band,
Yeah.
it was a big deal.
I'm thinking of the scene of that thing you do in the department store when
Yeah.
the song comes on the radio.
Oh yeah, that was it for us. That was like a moment, for sure.
When did Sanctus Real really start kicking in, like touring and the first album, and how far after winning that contest to, like, you're a name now in the CCM world?
Yeah, that contest was probably like 99, maybe 2000. And at the time, we had already crossed paths with Audio Adrenaline, which that was a really cool experience, how they took us under their wing in some regard, because they were starting a record label at the time. So one of the projects...
Was that Flickr?
Flickr Records.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were coming through town, Toledo, on some kind of zombie tour. And we had given them an older project. It was like a 3 or 4 song CD, and we were still in high school. We were seniors in high school, and they got a hold of us after that somehow. They contacted us. I think we slipped in the CD at their show. A week later, I had a message on my answering machine from this guy that was a mutual friend. He said, hey, my buddies in Audio Adrenaline want to come out and meet you guys, and they're going to come back through town. It's on their way to another show, and they want to set up something. It's like, set up what? And you're like, well, a concert. Oh, cool. He's like, I want to do it at my church. He was a youth pastor outside Toledo. I'm like, okay. And this was like 2 weeks before we graduated from high school, and we had to get permission to get out of school early to go set up for the show, and our school wouldn't let us go early. Like, it was this time of year. We had 2 weeks left. We were, graduating.
Yeah.
All of our coursework was done, and I think they let us out like half an hour early. We got out a little bit early. But we went out and played this show for Audio Adrenaline. It was like a showcase, more or less. And they liked it. They ended up playing some songs on all of our gear after we played. It was like a big party. Like, it was all the news in the area. It's like, could Sanctus Real get signed? Like, the word kind of got out at that point. So it was full outdoor, like this small community. The road was closed. They had like a flatbed truck, and we played on it. And from there, they took us under their wing and kind of helped us develop. They offered us a deal, and at that time it was too early on for us to take it. But even beyond that, they had us down in Nashville and showed us some of the ropes at that time. It's like, I was 18, barely. I was turning 18, and to have a band like that we looked up to, take notice and want to help was another moment where I think we decided, hey, we should be more serious about this after high school. So that was
You guys just weren't thinking that way. Like, somebody to offer you something at 18 years old, were you just like, well, college, or, I mean, you just weren't thinking,
oh yeah,
this is a career.
Not at all. It
Wow.
was college. It was like real job, and we were self-taught garage band. Like, what were we gonna do that was gonna be worth skipping out on college, And
Did you guys all go to college?
I think I was the only one who went until it got to a point where it wasn't feasible to do both.
Okay.
But so right out of high school, I was the one who went to college. So
To study?
graphic design. At that time, it was a really rudimentary program they had there, but it was computer-based.
Yeah.
Getting into it. So yeah.
Your first taste of the CCM world, where's that crossroad at?
The big CCM world? Or
Yeah.
Here. I had a band back in the day called Cannons, and I did we did some
Cannons.
Cannons.
Okay, like the weapon cannons?
No, Cannons.
Okay.
Like song, or Truth, or whatever, the canon.
Nice.
We were definitely trying to do CCM related stuff, although we were a little rockier at the time. And actually, what's funny is we won a contest too. We did. We won a contest, and the prize for this contest was not a CCM prize. It was opening for Hanson, Mbop, Hanson.
Hey,
Nice
man.
surprise.
Yeah, and Rooney, which was far more exciting to me
That's
than
sweet.
Good
than
band.
Hanson. So, yeah, we that was kind of our thing where I thought, man, maybe we're good enough, but man, I told you in there, it's a lot of work and it's an uphill battle. And I had a family. I got married early, and so I didn't have much of a taste of the CCM world outside of listening to songs until 3 years ago, and then I got more than a taste.
You opened for Hanson.
I did open for Hanson.
What time is it? The Mbop time, or
It
was it?
was a little bit past that.
Okay.
This was probably 2008, maybe somewhere in there, and they were coming back a little bit with. I'm trying to remember the song. They just put out a record, and we played at Royal Oak Music Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know where that's
Big
at.
deal.
So it was. We as a band, we hadn't done much at all. But we had a song. There was this. It's not nearly what it was, but there was this thing called Our Stage that was run by MTV, and you put your stuff, and people would rank your songs, and there was a lot of indie stuff on there, and we did really well on this site, and we had this song called Someday Soon, and put it in this contest, and It's a funny story because my wife will tell you that it seems like every band that I make fun of, I end up a part of. Not Sanctus Real.
No, that's true.
But there's a history to this, and I actually one time, she grew up loving Hanson, And one time, I was kind of joking, but kind of not. I was getting tired of it, and I threw her CD out the window of a moving vehicle.
That's a no right there.
And she still loves me. But it was probably 6 months later after that, and she laughed so hard. She thought it was the funniest thing, like such fate, right? Like, and so yeah, that's kind of my official foray into like, hey, maybe I should be doing. And what's funny about that is, getting that, winning that, did make me feel like I should do music. Because before then, it was kind of maybe I'm good enough, maybe you can write a song, maybe, and everything was kind of like only halfway. Even leading worship at the time, I had been a youth pastor more than a worship pastor up to that point. Although I'd done a lot of music, I'd done it more out of necessity than just, hey, you're good at this, so do a job. And it was kind of after that there was a level of validation for me that I felt like I could pursue doing music more than I was, and became a worship pastor not too long after that, like full time. So
Did you gain street credit opening up for Hanson with your youth kids?
they didn't know who they were.
No.
That's sad.
Did you spend any time with those brothers?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Any advice from them? Any kind of anything, or was it just passing?
We did it was kind of cool. They're cool guys.
Yeah.
And we spent actually quite a bit of time in their tour bus before the show. They did not a podcast, maybe it was a podcast. I think they were doing podcasts back in those days. But they did a whole interview thing with us. It was kind of part of the whole experience. And so they were really cool. I can't remember any real advice, but it was very low key, very laid back, and a lot of fun. They were really cool.
First big Sanctus Real tour. We're hitting the road for a length of time.
Yep.
Did you go out with anybody that I would know?
Bleach. I don't know if you remember the band Bleach. Rock and roll
Wasn't
band.
Bleach basically DC Talk's band? Or no, that's Zilch?
That's Zilch.
Zilch.
Yep.
Not to be confused with Bleach.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep. Same record label, I believe.
Okay.
They were on.
Bleach.
Bleach. They had some songs. I have to think through the names of the songs. Great guys.
I had a Bleach record.
I love
back in the
Bleach.
day.
You did?
I did.
They ended up on Tooth and Nail there before they were done. So great group of guys, and we had a mutual manager early on. So we ended up on the road with them, and I think we toured in Texas for like 2 weeks, and that was the majority of the run. We hit up Paris, Texas, places I had never heard of or seen. We were hitting all those big towns with Bleach. And that was the first tour we did that was outside of our region, for sure. And then from there, we did Festival Con Dios.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this little band that had a little song called I Can Only Imagine that was playing there. It had just come out, Mercy Me. They're on that tour, opening for this new solo act, Toby Mac, and Audio Adrenaline was headlining. And it was right before Mark had lost his voice. There's a lot of nights he couldn't sing on that tour. That was our first tour with a lot of acts, all on the same rotating thing. Jeremy Camp, it was his first tour. We were out together on that tour. The Benjamin Gate, that's where they met, Jeremy and his wife.
Is that 02? Is that 02?
Fall of 02. That was right
And that's
before
when
the
they
record.
would set up a tent in like a mall parking lot.
Yeah, it was multiple tents. Like it was this whole thing they would do and line it up, and they had this portable stage and put it up every day. It was a feat, and we got to play for 20 minutes, mid-afternoon. Nobody was there, but we were out doing it. You know, it was incredible. West Coast and
What a
back,
lineup.
the whole country. So
Wow. When did you look out in the crowd and realize, I think we got something here? When was that?
oh man, I have a hard time looking at the crowd when I'm playing. To be honest,
Yeah.
if I have to think, I have a hard time making myself really look to see what's going on.
Okay.
So if I have to think about a moment when I specifically looked out and thought something along those lines, it was, man, I'd have to think. we played a show in our hometown early on. We had to open a lot of shows that would come through Toledo, and we played at the time the biggest theater in Toledo, opening for Third Day, and this was right after September 11th. Actually, they were probably going to cancel the show. This might have been like within 2 weeks of that, and they had the show still, and I remember thinking there, my grandmother was there. Who was like a huge supporter of everything that we did as a band. Mm-hmm. I remember her like sitting side stage behind the curtain. It was a huge auditorium, and looking out to a full house in our hometown, and that was a moment for me because it was still early, before the touring started for real, 2001. So that was a moment, getting to open for Third Day and hang out with a band of that caliber when we were still, I was probably 20, 21, just turned 21, so.
First headlining tour?
First headlining tour was on, man, I don't want to get this wrong. I don't know if we did one for Fight the Tide, but we definitely did one for our third album, The Face of Love. And the Face of Love tour, I can remember having out the Afters. They were out with us.
From Texas?
Yep, and that was a good tour. I think we did a tour headlining for Fight the Tide, which was our second album, and we took out Hawk Nelson. And at the time, Hawk was breaking big, and people were more excited to see them than us.
What was that like? What's that like? I mean, obviously you could feel it.
Yeah.
Ticket sales, or
man.
What was that like?
It was wacky, right? I mean, it was crazy, I think, because at that point we had done quite a bit of touring, and these guys, first of all, they're from Canada at that point, and at that time, they were just kids. We were kids, but they were kids.
Yeah.
And just the hodgepodge of setting things up, and just how they didn't know what they were doing, but it didn't matter because whatever they were doing was working, like really connecting. And I remember after the first date, at the time, our manager was out. And he wasn't out. I think we called him afterwards. And the ticket had a picture of them. It was our first headlining tour. It was our first headlining tour. Had a bigger picture of them than us. And we call our manager, and our manager, no joke, who's still in the industry and is just like, call it how it is. He's like, well, what are you going to do? They're bigger than you. Like, that was it. That was the conversation. And so we're like, okay, well, I guess that's that. And, we didn't really care, but it was our first headlining tour.
Yes.
And so we kind of wanted to look like that. And, yeah, it wasn't the case.
Tons of number ones, tons of top fives. And Matt decides to leave the band. Mm-hmm. Was there conversations leading up to, I might want to do this, or was it all of a sudden, hey, I'm done and I'm going to go do this? You remember that?
I have to think specifically. That we made a record that was a difficult one to make, which was the last one with Matt. And that record took place throughout most of 2014, and because that record came out in the fall of that year, I believe. And I think there were some talks.
Difficult why?
It was difficult, man, for a handful of reasons. I mean, the most obvious that I think the band would agree on was we're working with a super talented producer who a lot of times you run across these guys who are very talented, and they can be a mess emotionally, work ethic, because they're creative. They're super creative, and they don't hold any schedules.
But they excel in one thing, they lack in another.
Yeah, and he was off the charts creative, and which was a sad combination of things for us at the time, because we made that record in Matt's backyard. Matt had just built this studio, freestanding studio in his backyard, and the producer agreed to come up and do the whole record there. So he loaded up his truck with all this crazy gear and came up and set up a shop and would fly back and forth, and we made the record throughout the course of a few months early that year. So it should have been a really enjoyable process. Like, we had finally gotten to that point, like, Matt has a studio, it's legit, we're gonna make our own record here, and we have a great producer, and at the time he had a lot of success with some other songs that were going on, so it was just like all these things seemed to be lining up, and we just couldn't get it to work. It just wasn't, I think it was just a clashing of different kinds of personalities when you entered into that. Creatively, it was difficult to land somewhere. Sonically, it was difficult. And at that point, I think it was difficult to tell who was steering the ship, too. So I think bands probably experience that a lot when you have some guys in the band are the glue, and some guys in the band are like the driving forces, and to keep all that cohesive can be difficult. And then you bring a producer in who thinks it should be this way or that way on top of it. It made it difficult. So during that record, there was some talk. It was almost more jokingly, at least I perceived it at that time, like, if this record doesn't work, then you know, kind of thing. Almost kind of like put it out there kind of thing that's kind of brewing in the back, which I get that, you know, but I saw such a huge opportunity at the same time. We have this world-class producer in our backyard, and we had just re-signed a deal. We were at a place where maybe we would actually make some money off of selling records. I mean, which is sad, but like we had just gotten to that point. And when that record came out and it just didn't do well, it was very shortly thereafter where some of those conversations that were kind of put out there before became way more serious. And so about been a couple months after that record came out was the conversation that ultimately led to it all just being like, yeah, you gotta step out.
Can you listen to that record at all and not have a kind of vibe? Can you hear greatness in it, or is it just a tough listen?
Don't worry me. I wasn't there.
Or do you perform those songs live with your new guy? You know, I mean,
We play one song off of that record.
did.
Right?
what's the?
Lay It Down. We played Lay It
Oh,
Down.
what a great song!
That was the first song we tracked for that record. That was the first one. So that was before a lot of stuff kind of got wonky with that process. And it was one of my favorite demos going into making the record. Like, I felt really good about that song. The label liked it. They felt like they knew it was going to be the first single. So it was more like, get in the studio and get that song done. And so we were this kind of exhilaration of this guy's here. We set up shop. And we were on a deadline to get that song cut and done, and then kind of move on and explore what the rest of the record really was.
Yeah.
And that song fits Dustin really well. We enjoy playing it. It's one of my favorite songs we've ever done, actually. And yeah, it was a great process making that song. But the record, if I try to, I honestly don't listen to it. I don't know if that's really a sad thing. I think it's just the way it goes sometimes. It's not like there's a negative, like I don't intentionally not listen to it because there's like a negative feeling I get from it. It's just, I guess I've moved on from it, and I don't listen to it.
Well, we're going to try something new during this podcast. We're going to play the whole record, and we're going to
keep the camera
set
on his
camera on Chris's face from the first song to the last, and then after that we'll talk more.
There's good songs on that record for
That's
sure,
funny.
but yeah, that would be amazing.
How long did it take you to decide? Because I'm guessing when the lead singer says, "I'm done," you start going, I'm just guessing, am I done? And how long did it take you to go, no, I'm not done? Was there a couple months, a couple weeks, a couple days?
Man, I don't know if I ever thought it was done. Not because I had any clear idea of how it would work otherwise at all. Like, we didn't have any ideas. That conversation was had at Christmas time that year, and it was like this process of, I think I'm out, but I need some time. And so it was, I don't want to say limbo, but we just released a record, and and we had just hit the road pretty hard behind that record. And touring, as you probably know, like, you have to line stuff up I mean, it's seasonally, so stuff's lined up 9 months ahead of time. And if you're kind of putting the brakes on something, then you're kind of, the whole year,
It's a ripple effect.
yeah, like then you have nothing for that fall, basically. If you're saying, don't book anything right now because I just don't know what I'm going to do. So, yeah, I mean, that was the last time I was on any kind of salary, was that time, and that was 3 years ago. And so, the ripple effect was huge. And so, like, you have this whole machine that has things that have to happen to work. And then you kind of take one of the main cogs out. And I don't think I was in disbelief. I just think, I honestly think I just believed that I was still going to be here in some way or another. And I can't sing. I'm not a singer. So I wasn't like, I'm going to go do my thing now. I think I've always poured my heart into this because I've always believed in what we had done as a band. And I just felt like there's got to be a way, but I'm not going to force it. And I'm not going to try to figure it out myself necessarily and let it play out, because that whole year was kind of wide open, which was scary at the beginning of that year to think that we didn't know we were going to be. And it ultimately went that way. It took a couple months from the initial conversation. It took about 3 months before it was like, okay, it's done. And from there, the whole time up that 3 months, it was like, what am I preparing for? Am I preparing for this thing to maybe work? Or am I preparing for this to be done? And so then it started to be like, okay, it's done as is. And figuring out how to relay that to the record label and figuring out how to relay that to everybody was a whole another process. And then by the time that was figured out, it was like figuring out how to finish that season out with Matt. And you know, we had a bus at the time. I had to go sell the bus. We had all this stuff we had to figure out. And so my head wasn't even in a place where I could think of, how do we keep it going?
Yeah.
My head was like, let's just make sure we don't get in any trouble here with debts or any of that kind of stuff. And then lo and behold, you know, I think it was September?
Something like that.
August or September, we were about ready to go out on a farewell tour to Matt. I think we planned a tour and we called it Farewell to a Friend, because we didn't, even at the time, we didn't know Dustin when we were planning the tour, but we still didn't think
You don't want to shut the door on the band.
we didn't want to, because Matt said, if you guys want to go on, go on. And so we knew we had that liberty, and I don't know if we were just scared to test the waters. We just didn't know what that looked like, and we weren't going to rush it. So we were on the road doing that tour, and at some point in there is when we met and then started that relationship there. So I think there were nights on tour where Matt was sharing on stage what was happening and wasn't really able to say to the audience, and the band's going on, because we didn't know still, even then. So it was a lengthy process. It's a crazy year.
I'm coming to you next, but was that tense? Was that tour tense?
It was.
I mean, or did you just, it's business, so let's power through?
There's a lot of that. I think one of the saddest things to me of that tour, there's sad things surrounding that whole thing, but you know, there's a lot that could have been celebrated and never really had the opportunity to celebrate at all. It was a weird thing. The label put out like a best of CD. It's like, wow, we have a CD with a lot of good songs on here. We should be really stoked about this. And I remember being in the tour rehearsal in a room like this and opening up that box for the first time and seeing the CD and being there, getting ready to go out and do this tour, and kind of being like, I didn't have anybody to really be like, hey, look what we did. It was kind of like, cool, okay, you know, and then let's go out and play some shows and try to get through it. And I think we'd all probably say that at this point, looking back at that, because I mean, it was an era of time that we should all be proud of, for sure. And I don't think we ever, because of the way I want to say it was kind of abrupt, the way it kind of ended, it was kind of that feeling of, just get me through this year, kind of thing.
How did this happen? The new lead singer steps into the mix.
I stepped in when they were going through that storm. And I actually got a phone call out of the blue from the bass player at the time, who we are from the same town, and I hadn't talked to him in a long time, actually. And I knew he was playing for Sanctus. I was vaguely aware that Matt was leaving. And I think this was like a week. It wasn't too long after it became public. And all of a sudden one day, he just blew up my phone. And I didn't have it on me. When I found my phone, I had like 3 missed calls and texts. And then he texted, he had his wife text my wife. We hadn't heard from them in years. And I was like, this is kind of strange. And I looked at my wife and said, you don't think they're calling me for that, do you? And I was like,
The voice of reason says.
probably. And at the time, I think most people would say, you get your hopes up. I don't think I ever dealt with this thing of like getting my hopes up or thinking, because I to be honest, I wasn't sure what to do, even when I first got the call.
You're leading worship at a church.
I was leading worship.
You're doing fine.
I liked what I did. The church I was in, I loved the people, and it was good. And I love to lead worship even still. I mean, I lead worship all the time. So, but when I took the call, and that's what it was just kind of this moment of what's about to happen, because it came so far out of the blue. I didn't have any interest in terms of I would never have auditioned. If they had opened up, I wouldn't even have given it a thought to show up and say, I want to be your singer. It would never have happened. And so to get a call out of the blue and then say, come, hey, and they said, let's have dinner and meet the guys and kind of hit it off right off the bat.
Let's see if we can get along.
Yep.
We have common interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that first one it was me asking questions, you guys asking questions. And it was more of going into it, I realized that first meeting, I realized how difficult of a situation these guys were in. And that was when I first became their counselor and the psychologist of the band.
This is true. This is very, very true.
Oh, I can imagine.
And, it grew, and I found myself more and more feeling like it wasn't an accident. And I think my wife, the first thing she said to me when I said that's what they were interested in, she said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think it's interesting. And that was my exact words. I think it's interesting. For any artist that plays music, it would be interesting to join a band that's had success. And she just looked at me and said, you're such a sellout. That was the first thing she said to me. And then she started laughing, but I knew she wasn't completely joking. And it was about 2 weeks later that she came back and said, I've been praying, and I really feel like this is what you're supposed to do. So she made this complete flip. And then I told these guys, the big, literal, I told these guys, I said, listen, I don't care what decision you make. I didn't come to you. If this is supposed to happen, it'll happen. I said, but I have one request since you came to me. I said, don't leave me hanging. Whatever you do, just let me know as soon as you decide one way or the other. If you want me to continue on this path with you, or if you are just not interested, or if you're just going to can, I just want to know. Because something like this hanging over your head while you're trying to be in ministry, where you're trying to figure out a plan for your life, and then you've got this thing just hanging out there. And I said, just let me know. And a month went by, and I didn't hear from him. And I remember.
Did you feel like you were left hanging?
Oh, absolutely.
So you did feel that?
Oh, absolutely. I did. And I
terrible.
knew they were busy, and I knew they were going through a lot of stuff. But I also knew that it had been a month, and I needed some kind of clarity. And I remember the conversation. I was actually painting a wall in the church, because in ministry you do whatever you're asked to do.
Yeah.
I was painting a wall inside the church, and I was like, I'm going to call him because I'm getting tired of this. And so I called him, and I said,
Before
Bro,
you called them, by the way, had you made up your mind?
I had made up my mind to take the next step to figure it out because we hadn't gotten to a place where it was like all the cards were on the table.
Oh, okay.
And what I wanted to know is if that interest was still there. That's all. Like to know that I can continue kind of walking this path. And after a month, you're like, maybe it's not, and maybe I should just move on, which honestly would have been okay with me. It wouldn't have been a big deal. And the first thing I said to him was, you did exactly what I told you not to.
Yeah, you did.
And I said,
I was like, what?
I said, I'm just sitting here, and I've got to deal with this day to day. And he was like, I didn't even think you'd be interested.
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, I don't think you are fully aware of what the opportunity would mean to somebody. And after that, it was like, I don't know if we ever went like 3 days without talking.
Yeah.
After that,
It's
as we
been
kind
nonstop.
of moved to the next phase. So
It's funny you say you're painting a wall.
Oh,
I don't know if I ever told you where I was.
painting a wall somewhere.
No. This is something I've never shared here.
This is him calling you
Yep.
and where you're at when
Yep.
the call comes.
Yeah. And so, were we on that tour already
Yeah,
at that point?
I think so.
Okay.
I
So,
think so.
yeah. And it wasn't intentional leaving him hanging at all. We really enjoyed it. But to that point,
Yeah.
like, I seriously was like, why would he be interested in this? He's got a great gig at his church, his family, they got a nice thing going on. I didn't want to mess anything up. So I was in my car at Burger King with my phone in my hand, about ready to call up this other person that had been suggested to me to contact as a potential candidate. As I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to say to this guy? What am I going to say to this guy? Dreading this phone call, Dustin calls. And we have that conversation. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is it. And that it wasn't a question from there. It was like, okay, God, here we go.
See?
I don't think I ever told you that part.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and be honest. Did you go through the drive-thru after that? Chicken
Look
sandwich,
at this
Whopper,
body
what
here.
was it?
It was probably a Whopper.
Okay.
Burger
I'm a
King
Whopper
is-
kind of guy.
You know, I've known you for 3 years now, and
I think I did go in.
I'm not sure I've seen you go to Burger King before.
It has to be the right
It
time.
was a comfort food moment. He knew he left someone hanging for a month and needed to.
I feel like that might be true.
Yeah.
If someone in my world were to come to me and say, we want you for a much bigger radio station, I think that's how I would compare this.
Yeah.
I have a group of people I'd go to for wisdom. You went to your wife? Anybody else?
Nope.
She's the only one you talk to
She
about it.
is she's smarter than I am.
Did you cheat at all with like the youth group kids and go, hey, what do you think of Sanctus Real?
I wasn't in a youth group.
Oh, you weren't?
at the time. No,
Okay.
I would full-time worship. I was actually at the time. It's a long story. I was actually acting. I was an executive pastor too at that time.
Okay.
So I was kind of running a lot of the stuff at this church.
Doing a lot.
One of my best friends still works there and is now kind of doing what I was doing, except he doesn't lead worship. He's somebody that I talk to. A lot of it, for me, a lot of it was, I knew how hard it was going to be. I was not under any illusions. I think I even told you this. I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. And I think the only reason that I felt like doing it, or felt like that I did it, was not to join a band, Sanctus Real, but it was honestly, and it sounds like a cliche Christian thing, but I really felt like we were supposed to do it. There's been a lot of days since that I've questioned it, a lot of days, and yet every time I do, it's like a response. And I think even right now, at this moment, if this thing failed, if no one ever listened to us again, I still would choose to do it again. Like even if the world sees success one way and say you guys didn't have the same kind of success as the previous band, the way the band was, what I've gone through and what we've dealt with and the growing that's happened is exactly, I think, what is supposed to happen. So I didn't have a lot of advisory type people. There's a lot of people that were super excited. A lot of people that knew who Sanctus Real was and thought it was, a no-brainer. That was what I heard more often. Like, of course you have to do it. It's the chance of a lifetime. And I had a lot more of that than people saying it's going to be hard. And so, yeah, really to be honest with you, the decision was in my wife's hands. It still is. in my wife's hands.
Happy wife,
awesome.
happy life.
And I'll say, I mean, people probably are going to know her from around here. You know, she sacrificed more than anybody to do this. And the fact that she is still on board and engaged and wants this to succeed and believes we're supposed to be doing it is probably the only reason I'm still doing it. Is because she has told me over and over again, this is what you're supposed to do. I want you to do it. And so when she came to me and said, I feel like this is what we're supposed to do, knowing how hard, and she knew as well. That was my thing. Like, okay, if she's on with this, I think it'd be great. And we're adventurous people. We've taken a lot of risks in our lives. These guys know now.
Yeah, it's incredible.
We've never been afraid, Sarah or I, we've never been afraid to just do it. Like, if we feel like I want to die knowing that I've experienced things.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's money. I don't care if I have a lot of money. I've never cared about that. But I want to die saying I lived life and lived it as well as I could and took a lot of risks. And we can already say that. So let's not take too many more. But
I like who you chose. I remember the announcement. I remember hearing some of the first parts of the music. I'm kind of glad you went with no offense, with a nobody, not like a no name, because then, I don't know, the politics and they're going to bring their thing over here to this, and is it just going to be a mashup thing or whatever? So I like what I'm hearing. As we're talking now, the new album, Changed, is out. Last question for you, and then we'll play a song. What did you learn about yourself when everything was it was a train wreck? When you look at it now, in my opinion, from 3 years ago, it was lead singer's gone, manager's gone, record label's gone, booking agent's gone, in rock, got to sell the bus, like you said.
Yeah.
What'd you learn about yourself during all that?
Jeez. Man, I think I learned how to forgive myself. I think. Because there's a lot of stuff I dealt with through all that where I felt like maybe it's all my fault. I don't know.
you got him, man.
You got me, Corey. And that's a long process. When you grow up with people and you experience so much life together, it's like to have to say goodbye to somebody in a work sense, and that happens to people all the time, you know. But I think this has always been more than that, and yeah, I think getting to that point, I needed somebody to listen and somebody to talk to. And I mean, I couldn't have asked for like a better, I don't know, like a better person to be out there doing what we're doing with right now for this point in my life. And I've experienced a lot of freedom, I think. And still, just putting a record out and saying this is who we are, I mean, I don't take that lightly. It's like it's a big deal to put that stamp on there. This is our band, you know. And so I don't know. I don't want to claim ownership in any of it because I never really have, but I think I can claim that I've been able to forgive myself for a lot of things I dealt with through it.
I love that you're not just a Band-Aid. You know,
So do I.
To fix the hole in the dam. I love what I just heard there about you. That's man, proximity in ministry is a tough one sometimes when somebody leaves.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to keep whatever that was. It's like, well, no, I'm over here now.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, we talked about this a couple of months ago. I truly had a moment for you when I saw the photo of you guys together as family with Matt and that. And I was like, I'm so glad that happened. I don't know the story behind it, but I'm glad that there was, there's not this anymore, or even that there was, but there's some sort of, still my pal, still my buddy, and and you're in the mix in there, and
It's family, you're always gonna be family.
Be still, my soul, for the best is yet to come. Though the earth below is shaking, and I struggle to hold on to anything that isn't bolted down. Watching my whole world shatter on the ground, and I find that I'm safe and sound. My hope is in the Lord, and I am blessed beyond compare to find my joy in things that last. Finding peace in who I am rather than my circumstance. And I'd rather hear one simple phrase from my Father's loving voice than to hear the praise of strangers. My hope is in the Lord. So come and wait, for the future is secure. And though this flesh be broken, your spirit will endure. For the battle is not with skin and bone, and though we own the world, we are beggars all. And I hear the voice of Jesus call. My hope is in the Lord, and I am blessed beyond compare to find my joy in things that last. Finding peace in who I am rather than my circumstance. And I'd rather hear one simple phrase from my Father's loving voice than to hear the praise of strangers. My hope is in the Lord. So we come and wait in the promise of His grace, for we are all just travelers, and our destination waits. For the pain we feel is temporary, victims all of the ordinary, but God is offering sanctuary. Our hope is in the Lord, and though I am blessed beyond compare to find my joy in things that last. Finding peace in who I am rather than my circumstance. And I'd rather hear one simple phrase from my Father's loving voice than to hear the praise of strangers. My hope is in the Lord. Oh, and I'd rather hear one simple phrase from my Father's loving voice than to hear the praise of strangers. My hope is in the Lord.
What else with Corey Mann on the Studio DNA Podcast Network.